Confessions of an Economic Hitman is a semi-autobiographical work written by John Perkins and published in 2004. In what is an exposé of international corruption and mass murder, Perkins reveals in this tell-all book about his days working for the United States as an EHM, an economic hitman. Perkins' job involved cheating countries around the globe out of trillions of dollars, mainly by convincing corrupt leaders of poor countries to take on huge loans from corrupt companies with globalist and imperialistic intentions such as the World Bank and the IMF in order to build infrastructure in the subject country that would only serve to make a few elites even richer, but plunge the rest of the country into further poverty and death. The conditions of the loans included that the works carried out in these nations would be done by American construction companies, so essentially, the money that is promised to these countries never even leaves American soil. The economic hitman's targets are then tasked with the impossible feat of paying back the huge and growing interest on the original loans, and the countries always end up having to pay back the interest without even getting anywhere near the original loan, and any money that could be used on lifting the country out of poverty is instead handed over to the American businessman. In most cases, the countries are unable to pay the loans back and default on them, as planned by the EHMs. Then a deal is struck, where essentially the United States says, right, you were unable to pay through money, so instead give us votes in future United Nations decisions. Let us build military bases on your land. Let us rework the education system in your nation to match our way of thinking. Either way, the country is now enslaved by the United States in what in essence harks back to the colonial period. But today's slavery does not require half-naked men in chains. Rather, entire nations are enslaved economically. Once the job is done, the United States then moves on to their next target, and then the next and the next and the next, with the goal, world domination. Ecuador, Panama, Pakistan, you name it. That's just Perkins' side of the job. According to him, when he and the rest of the EHMs fail to convince a nation's leader with their promise of riches, the CIA is sent in to topple the usually democratically elected leader's reign, or just straight up assassinate them, and either do business with whoever takes his place, or install a puppet dictator, as famously done in Iran when the Shah of Iran was installed with the help of the CIA after overthrowing the previous leader of the country. And when that fails, Perkins says, the state just finds an excuse to go to war with the country, raping and pillaging it along the way. There's a lot more to it, but that's the basic gist of it. Foreign policy has never been more captivating. It is truly a stunning piece of work, a terrifying insight into the world we live in and just what is going on around the world. It unfortunately validates and confirms things that many people believe about the Anglosphere without evidence, and for those who somehow don't buy it in spite of the abundant evidences and references Perkins provides, just look at what is happening in the world today, how America goes and destroys country after country, Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Libya, one after the other, or how major development deals with nations like Ecuador, Panama or Nigeria have done nothing to aid these nations fight against poverty after all these years. This should get your brain thinking. I believe this book is essential reading. Everyone should read this book, and it's so eye-opening and detailed. There are no conspiracy theories here about the Illuminati or lizards in human skin, just imperialistic, narcissistic, greedy people at the top without an ounce of compassion or empathy, and with a lust for increasing their size of the pie. Some of the revelations in the book are downright shocking, making me astounded that Perkins hasn't been murdered along with the numerous victims he talks about. Maybe he's saying just enough not to get himself bumped off. Motivated by guilt and a thirst for justice, Perkins puts into writing some things that people have been talking about for years but just haven't been able to find proof for or properly articulate. Global power, world domination, these things all sound like something out of a fantasy novel, and yet here we are in the 21st century with arguably the most intense, largest, systematic form of colonialism and oppression the world has ever seen. Perkins shares his expertise on why exactly the state has an economic superiority and political dominance over other nations. He tells us of secret meetings in faraway lands, wars hidden from the media, and the masked hatred that the world has for Americans which the average citizen doesn't even know about. But this isn't some James Bond novel. This is real life. This is actually happening. And we're part of this sick, almost unescapable cycle. If you want increased insight into America's relationship with the rest of the world, 9/11, Wahhabism and terrorism, the political state of countries like Iran and Colombia, and just in general how modern international widespread slavery works, Confessions of an Economic Hitman is a must read.